So I was just sitting down to watch The Last of Us Episode 2, and then I thought, oh, I suppose I better review Episode 1 before I do 2. So here it is. You've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, this will contain spoilers. As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, so let's get to it. So it's safe to say that video game adaptations are more miss than hit. For every one good Resident Evil film, there seems to be about 8 bad ones. And adapting one of the most beloved video game franchises of the last 2 decades comes with a little bit of pressure. But The Last of Us is finally here to seemingly pretty solid reviews from people who love the game. But I've never played it myself and I don't know much about it. In fact, I've avoided really looking into it in the run-up to this show because I wanted to see if someone who hadn't had any experience of the game could enjoy it. And this show is getting absolutely rave reviews from the first episode. It's the second biggest audience for an HBO premiere in the last decade. And if you know anything about HBO, they tend to turn out a lot of high quality shows, so that's pretty much a big deal, and it lets you know the level of hype and enthusiasm that this show, and maybe even this franchise, can bring. But if you haven't seen the show or played the game, this is just a quick rundown of what's going on. So basically, plagues end the world in a final hope, but it being the first episode, it doesn't get too much into it. In fact, it actually starts long before the main timeline of the story does, which is in the 1960s. So this opening does lay out the sort of premise of the show and a what if the world and climate change happened. Potentially it could lead to a series of events where a fungus takes over the world. So spoiler alert, that's the sort of baddie in the show, other than, humans who are probably still terrible because, there's always going to be terrible humans as long as there's humans. We know that, we accept that. Anyway. But yeah, this opening with the whole thing about climate change and a plague, I thought was a little bit too heavy and on the nose for me. I still don't know how I feel about shows and movies introducing pandemics and things like global warming. I mean, I like to watch entertainment to escape the horrible world that we live in, not get reminded that it's out there once I turn the television off. But I really want to know what you guys think. Does stuff like this bother you? Do you enjoy it? Are you not fussed by it? Let me know in the comments below, because I think that's something that's very interesting, and I think it's something that can definitely affect people's level of enjoyment when it comes to entertainment. But that's just me. But anyway, after the 60s intro, we get, pretty much a Game of Thrones intro, and I'm pretty sure that if you laid the Game of Thrones music over these titles, it would work. But anyway, after the 60s, we get a time jump to 2003. And first of all, let's just get it out of the way. My God, the actress that plays Sarah is Tandy Newton's daughter, and if you know who Tandy Newton is, you spotted that straight away. We get introduced to Sarah, her dad Joel, and her uncle Tommy, which, as far as we can tell, is sort of domestic bliss. We don't really get too much of what's going on with the family dynamic here, and maybe the show's going to fill this in later on. We're going to have to wait and see. But I did like all the little nods from 2003, especially the Atkins diet, because if you were around at that time, you know that in the early noughties, the Atkins diet was the fad that everyone was on. But anyway, we see Sarah going about her sort of day-to-day business, and things are slowly starting to unfold around her. The usual stuff with the flashes of the news, sirens in the background, military jets overhead, and then it culminates in a demented, tormented old lady attacking her. Standard horror stuff, you know the drill. And once it all does happen, it does feel very real, because remember, a few years ago, we were all facing a threat, and for a second we didn't know what was going to happen next. Sure, it never got this bad, but the whole toilet rolling pasta situation is going to be one that lives with me for quite a while, and you really feel the panic here. And again, because it's 2003, they don't have the sort of internet access or iPhones or tablets or mobile devices that we have, so they've got to rely on the TV and radio for their news, which, if it's out, then hey, you've just got to go and try and look after yourself, and that's pretty much what happens here. And it just escalates and escalates. And if you've seen the showrunner Craig Mazin's last show, Chernobyl, and if you haven't, definitely check it out. That show delivered a real sense of dread and anxiety when it came to radiation. And this show does pretty much exactly the same in the opening 20 minutes. That the sense of panic and anxiety here is absolutely huge and palpable. And remember, this is just the intro, the main story hasn't even happened yet. But after dodging fallen planes, zombie mobs, and they're on the run, it's a soldier that tries to kill Joel and accidentally shoots Sarah that drives home that, man, you're going to be in for a ride here. If they're killing kids in the opening episode, this show is just going to be bleak and you're going to have to strap yourself in for it, because that scene is pretty harrowing. And I like the fact that you didn't see what Joel done next. First sort of 28 minutes, half hour of this show absolutely had me hooked. But after that, we get a 20-year time jump, so it takes us up to our present 2023. And Joel, rather than being in Texas, is now in Boston, and the whole world has had to adapt to this plague. Not Mad Max levels of apocalypse, no one's running about in leather strapping people to cars just yet. But let's put it this way, Uber Eats isn't working. I wouldn't say making a living, but just surviving, I guess, helping to clean up and maintain the quarantines. Humanity isn't struggling, but it isn't in the best place, as Boston seems to be under some sort of dictatorship. But they don't really go into too much detail about who's in charge, just that it's not that pleasant a place to live in. And what's left of the government in Boston is dealing with an organisation called the Fireflies, who appear to be rebels, so are they the good guys or are they the bad guys? We don't get too much on this. And this is where the show sort of lost me, if I'm being honest. I mean, I know it's only the first episode, but it didn't explain enough about this world and the setup. We meet all the main characters, and by that I mean Tess and Elle. We find out that Ellie's immune, so she's the cargo that they've got to deliver to this other group of Fireflies. And you get it, it's a quest, save the world, find the cure, that sort of thing. But it's all the stuff that they're missing out in this episode that I think would have been more interesting. How did Joel and Tommy go from Austin to Boston? That's something that I want to know. How did Joel meet Tess, and how did Ellie get bitten are also huge questions as well hanging over this. Also, what do the Fireflies want? Do they want to overthrow this dictatorship? Do they want to be in charge, or do they just want a better system? Is this dictatorship everywhere? Because they don't sort of really mention anything outside of Boston, but they do mention that there are other groups of Fireflies. And again, it is only the first episode, so I guess most of this is going to be explained in future episodes, and my god, do I hope they do it. Because although the show didn't really grip me, the cast are great, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Because after The Walking Dead, I think I sort of had apocalypse fatigue, and while this didn't really show me anything new or exciting that gripped me outside of the fungus plague, the actors here and the dynamic and the potential for this show is absolutely huge. It's just the fact that they didn't fill the world out enough for me, and for non-game players, I don't really feel that there was that much of a hook to the first episode. Because it's all stuff that we've seen before, it's not particularly gripping, they're not doing anything new. There's no huge reveals other than the fact that Ellie is the first human that they found that's immune. And part of me does wonder, when you're doing a video game adaptation, you're sort of damned if you stick exactly to what you're seeing on the original video game, and then you're completely damned if you go off and do your own thing. So I don't know what the balancing act is here between the game and the show, and I don't know how much they're cutting out or how much they're adding in. But for me, the first episode did have a lot of issues in the fact that it just didn't deliver in the excitement that I was hoping for, and I certainly didn't feel the levels of excitement that everyone else felt that had played the game. I'm also wondering, is this going to have a Game of Thrones issue where if the show is successful, and it appears to be incredibly successful from the first episode, are they going to have to go beyond the source material and do their own thing? Because let's be honest, that's when Game of Thrones got pretty crap, or at least that's when the cracks started to form. And given the fact there's only 2 Last of Us games and they've said that the first season is going to cover the entire first game, it means that they're going to be cutting themselves short somewhere, somehow. At least that's what I think. Or there is also the potential that it could go down a Walking Dead franchise route, in which case we're just going to get spin-off after spin-off, which has got varying less degrees of quality. Yeah, while I had huge anticipation for this show, the first episode didn't particularly dazzle me, and I know that not everyone is going to be happy with me saying that, especially the fans of the game, and I am not hating on this show, and I'm not being negative just for clicks. That's not really my thing. I'm just giving you my honest opinion on this, and I want to know what your honest opinion on this as well. Have you played the game? If so, did this show, after all the years it's been in development, live up to the hype for you? And are you looking forward to the rest of the season? Also, what did you think of the casting of the main actors of Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey and Anna Torv as Joel, Ellie and Tess? I really like them, especially Bella Ramsey and Anna Torv. I think Anna Torv is one of the most underrated actors that's come out in the last decade. Mindhunter and Fringe were absolutely fantastic. But even in those shows where she was playing a main character, she didn't really get that much focus or the attention that she deserves. Now, as I said, I'm just going to sit down and watch episode 2, so my review is going to be up later on today. And as always, if you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It's just a small click for you, but it means so much to me. I'm also going to be covering the Mando trailer because, man, it's going to be Pedro Pascal's year. In fact, it seems that he's going to have 2 of the biggest shows on the planet running back to back on different streaming platforms. My name's Elle. As always, thanks for watching.